Hello, I'm KVUE Political Director Ashley Goodo. On October 15th, State Representative Gina Hinojosa launched her campaign for Texas governor. The former Austin ISD Board president has represented Austin in the Texas House of Representatives for 10 years now. We sat down to talk about why she wants to be the next governor of Texas and the chances of Texas voters electing a Democrat. Representative Hinojosa, thank you for taking some time to talk with us.
My pleasure.
All right, so big announcement. Tell us what led you to this moment.
It's my pleasure. I'm happy to be here. I have served for almost 10 years in the Texas House, and now I've made the decision to run to be governor of the state of Texas to prioritize the needs of working Texans.
This decision, I would imagine, wasn't necessarily an easy one for you to come to. Maybe it was. Tell us what led you to the decision.
Well, you may not know, but I never wanted to run for office. I made my husband to never run for office before we got married, and it was only until my son's school was threatened for closure that I decided to run for the school board. Once there, I learned that our biggest challenge was that the state keeps all of our tax dollars instead of investing what we pay in property taxes into our schools. And so I ran for the Texas House to help fix that problem. It's been 10 years, and what I have learned is that our biggest challenge we have, the reason why my son's school was threatened for closure, the reasons why our schools don't get the funding they need, and our state is not working as it should, is because of Greg Abbott's corruption. What I have learned is that our tax dollars are going to enrich his friends and donors rather than be invested in our needs.
That's a big claim to make, right, about the governor. Talk to us about some examples of that.
You don't have to take my word for it. So just last month, an independent watchdog group, Public Citizen, released a report that demonstrated the governor has given almost $1 billion in no-bid contracts to his donors. That's outrageous. That is a level of corruption like we've never seen before in the state of Texas. We know he received $6 million to pass his voucher scam. We know before that he received $1 million and went easy on oil and gas after Winter Storm Uri, right? So he has a record that Texans know very well now, and he's not deserving of a fourth unprecedented term as governor of Texas.
When we look back at those contracts, what would you say to people who say, well, maybe those were just the lowest bids, maybe those are just the best companies for the job?
They might have been under a competitive bidding process, but the governor waived the law with an executive order. He's done it every month since 2020, and he's given no bid contracts with Texas taxpayer dollars. That is bad government, and we have our competitive bidding process to protect against that type of corruption. The governor has ignored the law and just benefited his donors.
Is there something else about this particular moment, about where we're going to be in 2026? I mean, obviously, you've kind of laid out, right, clearly your issues with the governor. I would imagine that some of them are not new from the 10 years that you've been in office. But why now? Why 2026?
I feel like I have done good work in the Texas legislature, almost a decade working. We've passed some good legislation. It's been a team effort with great staff and great community support. But now I don't think we will have the Texas we deserve unless we have a governor who prioritizes Texans. And that's why I made the decision to run for governor of Texas.
This particular legislative session was a tough one for Democrats. It felt like, just speaking to other lawmakers, that it was just one thing after another and that you all couldn't get some of your priorities passed in this session. Was there something about this past session that influenced your decision?
So it wasn't just hard on Democrats. It was hard on working Texans. It was hard on our neighborhood public schools. That's why I know we've talked before about my partnering with MAGA moms in support of our neighborhood public schools and against the privatization of our public school dollars. So it's not just Democrats. It's Texans in general who are suffering under Greg Abbott's leadership.
Some would say this past session, you didn't pass, bills. Were you an effective lawmaker to now want to be able to run for governor?
Well, I have a 10-year record of passing legislation, but also this session alone, I was able to include in legislation a waiver for our beloved Rosedale school that serves medically fragile kids. I negotiated that into a Republican bill because it was facing closure because it was inappropriately treated by the accountability system. So I also was able to win something I've been working on since my first term in office, and that is a ban on charter schools from excluding kids because they have a disciplinary record, even just going to the principal's office. That has the impact of leaving our neighborhood public schools with a critical mass of the hardest to educate kids, and it's just not right that the charter schools are cherry picking who they educate. So finally, I was able to negotiate that into a separate Republican chairman's bill, and that became law.
When you look at those things, right, it took you 10 years to build those relationships, to be able to pass something that you've been working this whole time to get passed. Some would say you are really effective at being able to do that, at being able to get amendments onto bills, to change bills. And they would fear, right, that they're going to lose that if they lose you as their representative, if they lose you in the House. What do you say to those folks?
I'm very proud of my record. At the same time, we shouldn't have to work so hard to do the right thing. If we had a governor who set the agenda that Texans want, that Texans deserve, our legislators wouldn't have to work so hard against a system that is hurting Texans. So that's why I've decided to make the jump and run for governor.
You know, some people would say a Democrat running for and winning any statewide office, any statewide seat in Texas is a long shot, just looking at the history. You feel like you can change that, though. Why?
So out there in this state, Texans want change. Politics as usual is just a non-starter for Texans. So I think the time is right to run for governor. I think Texans are open to doing things differently. And what I'm hearing out in the community aligns with recent polling on this issue.
It's interesting because it also feels like Texans are more divided than ever before, that it is very clear people who are team red versus team blue.
There are whole industries set up to divide us against each other, right? But when you meet with people, I've talked about working with MAGA moms on education issues. When you meet with people, often we find that we have a lot in common. We all love our kids. We want the best for our kids. We all don't want to keep spending so much on housing, on electricity. These are the kitchen table issues that keep Texans up at night, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, or independent. And so there are politicians, including Greg Abbott, that stoke those divisions. It's my intent to work on the issues that we can all get behind.
You know, obviously you mentioned education. I would imagine that's going to be at the forefront of your platform. Talk to us about the other big things you want to change.
Well, cost of living is not where it should be in Texas. In fact, we've seen costs of housing go up. Texas has one of the worst affordable housing records in the state. We know the cost of health insurance is very high, and that we could insure another over 1 million Texans if Greg Abbott would just agree to pull down the federal dollars to insure another over 1 million Texans with taxpayer dollars that they've already paid into the federal system, right? He refuses to do it because of partisan politics and because of pride. And as a result, Texans aren't getting the health care that they deserve.
So health care, education,
kitchen table issues.
Perfect. Okay. All right. You know, heading to 2026, in order to face off with Governor Greg Abbott, you're going to have to win in March. There are already 4 Democrats who have announced their plans to run for governor. What makes you set you apart in that field?
Well, I have a record of a decade, as we've been talking about, that I think speaks for itself. I will be running on that record, but my goal is November. That challenge is too important to take my eye off the prize. The goal is to win in November.
I do want to ask you, one of the probably the most well-known up until this point Democrat who was running is Andrew White, son of a former governor. He ran against Lupe Valdez several election cycles back. And he's running and defining himself as an independent Democrat, that is what is going to work, getting people on both sides of the aisle to to back him, not division. What does that say to you? Is that something that you feel like is familiar for that strategy?
I know him a little bit. He seems like a good man. I will tell you that my focus right now is on kitchen table issues and bringing Texans together around things we can all get behind, making sure that our tax dollars that we pay in to the state, because Texans pay a lot in tax dollars, that those are being used wisely, that those are being invested into the needs of Texans. And that's where my focus in bringing people together behind a common agenda that puts Texans first.
It's a big lift, right? We know the size of Governor Abbott's war chest, being able to get out and talk to Texans, getting them to know you. How are you going to do it?
Well, Greg Abbott can keep his money. We'll have Texans with us. Greg Abbott's war chest comes because of, as I said, the corruption that we have seen time and time again from this governor. You don't get that kind of money doing right by the people. And so he has his record that speaks for itself. It is a record of higher costs, more Texans struggling. It is a record that he owns he's been in office almost a quarter of a century in statewide office, right? And I have a record that I'm proud to stand on and a vision for Texans that is about their needs and their dreams to achieve.
Give us some final thoughts for viewers about this announcement and the campaign and what you want to do for Texas.
Well, this is a very exciting time, and I would encourage people to get involved in our campaign. This is a campaign that will center working families, center the things that Texans care about. We're launching our launches in the Valley, where I was born and raised. That is the community that made me the woman I am today. I'm proud to lead with those values. Those are the values that I have brought to my leadership over this last decade, and then before that on the school board. And so I'm excited to be engaging on these issues and talk about real solutions that Texans can get excited about.
In a statement, Governor Greg Abbott's campaign manager called State Representative Hinojosa, quote, too radical for Texas. Writing in part, quote, Hinojosa has proven that she is out of step with Texans. Time and again, she chooses woke extreme ideologies over the safety and security of Texas families, end quote. Now, Hinojosa joins 4 other Democrats vying to challenge Governor Abbott: East Texas farmer Bobby Cole, Bay City Council member Ben Flores, U.S. Marine Corps veteran Nick Pappas, and Houston businessman Andrew White. Candidates can start filing to be on the ballot next month.